Hey team, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader Podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and I got a really awesome episode up for you guys here today. This interview is going to be really cool. We're going in a little bit of a different arena this week. I've got Dr. Andy Noon with Decatur Street Consulting. We're going to be talking about one of the biggest issues that we know that you have in agriculture today, which is succession planning. We're going to be diving into that, and then all of the interesting tactics that I can squeeze into the next 30 or 40 minutes that Andy uses with his background in organizational psychology in industrial psychology, right? Is that that's the proper term? So we're going to be prying into all this to like find out like how can we help you guys better prepare yourselves for what's coming up here in the next few years. As in agriculture, like a lot of arenas, we're facing a lot of retirement and a lot of changes and a lot of turnovers. And so I'm excited to dive into it. Andy, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, Mark.
This is going to be cool, but you get the same opening question everybody gets. What does it mean for you to be intentional?
I think when I think about being intentional, it all goes back to prioritization. For me, I'm somebody who likes strategy and thinking about strategy. So really getting honed in on how to prioritize and focused, and not just be up in the clouds and thinking about all the great things I could be doing, but really focusing on how are you going to make it happen? How are you going to get results? And focus there. That just helps me to be very intentional about what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, beautiful. For you, where does the love for strategy, the strategic mind? I know some people love it, some people avoid it, some people prefer the details and they would be down in the muck and figuring it all out. But what for you, like I'm you and I are similar. So where does that love for strategy come from?
Um, I think it all has started for me with, if you could look at my psychological assessments and different things like that, I'm a high learner. And so
Mhm.
I love learning new things. I love learning how things work. And I do have a PhD in industrial psychology, and I've always just loved reading about um, how leadership works, how organizations can be most successful, and really getting that learning going enables me to kind of mind map stuff and see, okay, well, if I think about something this way, what's the impact that's going to have on a different aspect of the organization or my life or whatever that might be.
Cool. All right. I'm excited to dive into this. Maybe not like the rest of everybody listening, maybe is not as excited as I am. But I'll give you a little backdrop. So my undergrad degree is from University of Minnesota in agriculture education, right? And when most of my friends were going to do their student teaching to become ag teachers in high schools around the country, um, there's a small group of us in a niche topic or a niche group in the ag ed department that were called HRD, like Human Relations Development or something like that. It was this kind of strategic learning development group that were none of us really wanted to be ag teachers. We wanted to get into maybe something else more related to education, being in the educational space. And for me, when I got into my HRD classes at the University of Minnesota, which is one of the top ranked programs in the country, completely by accident, I fell in love with learning these things like OD, organizational development, and industrial psychology, and so it just fascinated me that you could think about a company, and I still think about it to this day. If we push on one part of the company over here, if we make a change at this level of employee, or we make a change on leadership, or we change this process, right? That generates potentially a completely new output within the
Yeah,
company. Where most people just
absolutely.
think, I'm just showing up to go to work today, right? Just help me go sell more, help me do my job better, help me lead better, help me get my team to pay attention, help people to just finish a job so I don't have to go back and double check it all the time. Like that's what most people are like frustrated with, right? And so we're looking at kind of like the whole environment that influences all those things. That's how I think about it. But for those who maybe don't have a PhD or a master's in this arena, what is industrial psychology?
Yeah, I mean, in its broadest sense, industrial psychology is bringing psychological principles into how organizations work. And you're you're probably thinking, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, as leaders, we think about motivation. What motivates people? Well, there's a whole set of theories and a whole set of thought processes about what motivates people. What creates job satisfaction, which we know results in reduced turnover and higher
Mhm.
retention. There's a whole set of thought processes about how you do that, and you can measure them and put statistics around it.
Mhm.
There are actual theories about how what good leadership looks like, which is one of the things I'm passionate about. And
Mhm.
so, as part of industrial psychology and just psychology in organizations, is things aren't just random. And so, putting some like evidence-based thought process around how to make the organization more effective through the people that work there. You sometimes, I've been in HR departments all my life, but sometimes they don't necessarily think that way because
Mhm.
they're not steeped in the research and the best practices that come out of some of the academic aspects of industrial psychology. So my goal
Yeah.
is ultimately to translate that what we know from the evidence into practices that then result in better outcomes for the organizations that may want to apply those.
Got it. Okay, so we've got a group of people that are studying organizations, that are doing research, that are analyzing and figuring out and analyzing data and figuring out, okay, these are the what we would call best practices in
Yep.
the workplace today. And then you have a company where you just have people getting stuff done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, by the way, that's most of the people listening.
Yeah,
They're like, they're either
absolutely.
getting stuff done or they're looking
Yep.
for better ways to get stuff done. That's why they're listening to this show, right? And so you're kind of the translator in between.
For 25 years, I worked inside of organizations, helping that translation process into to real best practices around leadership, succession planning, employee engagement, all those culture, all those types of
Yep.
things.
Awesome. Okay. Man, so there's not enough time to go all the places I would love to go with this. So I'm going to attempt at least to keep it to a theme. Let's dive right in and just talk about succession planning. I know that's an area that you're personally helping organizations with. It's definitely an issue in the agriculture industry. If you think about the folks from the companies who are listening, I think in the just what we call the ag retail or the cooperative system within ag retail, I know of at least about 60 CEOs that are set to retire in like the next 36 months, which is terrifying because there's not likely enough relevant talent in the industry to step into those roles, which means we have to develop those people.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
this is the
That's a
spot.
huge
Like this
piece.
is your okay. Talk to me. You just talk for a minute. I'm going to shut up.
Yeah. So I would tell you the ag industry looks very similar to lots of other industries. I work in addition manufacturing and healthcare and financial services. The reality is that the C-suite is starting to get to the point where retirement's a big issue. And
Hmm.
so, what succession planning is, I equate it to it's a business process. What you're ultimately trying to do is figure out, with some amount of time to prepare, who is the right person to run the business through the future based on very specific identified skill sets, capabilities, knowledge, experiences that are going to make that organization's strategy successful in the future. And so, how do you do that? Well, the first thing is figuring out what is the business strategy of the organization over the next 5 years. So you don't want to hire your next CEO or prepare your next CEO or whatever level of job it is in the organization based on what the organization's doing right now. because
Hmm.
the strategy should be propelling you to the future. And so you need to think about that. You need to spend a little bit of time of what is this organization going to look like in 3, 4, 5 years.
Hmm.
Then look at, once you have your profile, define what that profile looks like, and then identify internally, do you have any potential successors? They could be the individual's that level's direct report, or it could be deeper in the organization. I always encourage organizations to look deeper. Look, where are some maybe hidden gems that are inside the organization? And then the next step is really, you need to assess those leaders. So do
Hmm.
they have, or could they have the experiences and the competencies necessary to lead the organization 4 or 5 years from now?
Yeah.
And I use assessments. I think
Hmm.
bringing some objective insights into that is incredibly powerful. It reduces biases, it reduces kind of hiring people because you like them, but because of true capabilities. And then once you've done that, the next you're really into the most important part of succession, which is development.
Hmm.
And I'm a huge fan of two things when it comes to succession development. One is self awareness building. So having them either receive a significant, candidates receive a significant amount of feedback,
Hmm.
or go through some psychological assessments, but
Hmm.
really get a honed view of who they are from a capability standpoint. The second part of that is giving them stretch assignments. The only way you're going to prep people for being successful at the next level is to stretch their capabilities. That means
Yeah.
giving them stretch assignments, putting them in roles that maybe they're not quite ready for, and really see how that they do. Stress test them to see what they're able to actually accomplish. And those that can step in to that and excel, you're going to start seeing some leadership skill sets that are going to be preparing them for that next level. So
Got
that's
it.
kind of the
Yeah.
general process of how to think about succession. Obviously, there's a lot of nuances in terms of making sure certain things fit within your culture and your capabilities as an organization. But if you don't start the process early, when it's time to find that person, the individuals won't be ready for
Hmm.
that ability to take that next step.
Right. Right. So it's like the old saying about when's the best time to plant a tree? Like 40 years ago. What's the next
But
best
for
time
sure
today?
today.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I can think of so many companies right off the top of my head that we work with. We've got, I don't know, 50 or so on our roster. And I really can't think of one that doesn't need to be listening to this and taking everything that you just laid out, and at least at the bare minimum, having that conversation at
Yeah.
their next executive team meeting.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is difficult, right? I worked in insurance for a long time. My first 12 years of my career worked in insurance. People don't want to buy insurance, right? I mean, they know they need it, but
Mm-hmm.
like it's kind of a little bit of a morbid thought, right? It's like I'm buying
Yeah.
something so when I pass away, it's a little bit of I've always experienced it similarly in organizations where they're like, well, like should I really be focused on this? It's like, well, are
Mm-hmm.
you trying to prepare for me to leave? Those types of things, and people don't get the idea. I got to be honest. There have been leaders who've died in organizations.
Yeah.
They've left unexpectedly. You don't, if you think you have a stable leadership situation, it may be true, but I've seen so many situations where that just something happens and then we're left holding the bag because there
Mm-hmm.
was nobody ready to take on the
Yeah.
capability. And then you have to go outside, which is has its own risks that go with that.
Right. Of course. I was as you're talking about that, I was just thinking about the verse from the Bible about like how do that says you'll know a tree by its fruit, right? And a good tree
Yeah.
produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. And, like, it's very hard to mistake. I was in a conversation with somebody one day, a gentleman who had probably 20 or 30 years of experience on me. We were looking at potentially acquiring their company. And he wanted to know, he's like, we got on this topic of leadership training, because we do a lot of leadership training for our companies, our clients. And I said, so how do you define good leadership? And I drilled it right back to that. And I was like, well, it's, a tree by its fruit. And
Yeah.
and if that leader was to walk away today, is there good fruit left
Yeah.
in the organization? Yes or no? And if that person has been there for at least 3 years, they've had enough time to start to generate and produce some good fruit. In my opinion, I
Hmm.
don't know if there's a specific time frame, but I always look at, I mean, I don't know if at least at the CEO level, and probably the VP level these days, you kind of have 36 months, right, to sort of get your feet under you and then
Yeah.
start generating enough results to stay. And so that's kind of how you know. And if you're sitting here, potentially leaving the organization, let's say even anywhere in the next decade, um, and you have not, and there's no good fruit being
Yeah.
prepped, being pruned, being taken care of to take over, then there's probably an issue,
Yeah.
with from a leadership perspective. So, which brings us to another topic. We talked about this off the microphone before we push record. Self awareness. This is such a interesting topic. Didn't expect to actually get into this today, but I want to go there. Okay. First off, let's just define, what is self awareness from a leadership perspective.
Yeah. I think when you know, everybody talks about needing self awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, self awareness is the ability to look at yourself and reflect in a way that you're able to learn from an experience, enhance your capabilities based on the fact that you know what your strengths are, you know what your development areas are, you know what experiences you need in order to continue to grow. It's that insight that comes through learning from your experiences as well as feedback, right? Getting feedback is the best way to uh, gain self-awareness, in addition to other tools like some personality inventories, and other things that can really maybe give you some language around things that maybe you they are some of your strengths and capabilities, but maybe there are a few things that you're just not able to put, yeah, a finger on it. Sometimes those tools help as well.
Yeah, good. Okay, so what do we do with self awareness? Like, so let's say I get the feedback, we do a 360, and we all get reviewed by our peers and whoever else we decide to involve in our 360, or we get sat down with our superior and we get some constructive criticism. If I'm someone who actually has self awareness, what am I doing with it now?
Yeah. I said this to Mark off airs. I have a different view of the importance of self awareness. Self
Hmm.
awareness is the first step, right? Getting to understand what your strengths and development capabilities are is important, because you can't do anything if you don't have that information. But the most important part is self improvement. So, what I always tell people that get feedback, whether it be from your 360 or maybe even your boss or peers, is ultimately you get to decide what you do with that information. Uh, you can identify maybe they missed what was really going on in the situation, in the context, and that feedback is not really that helpful. Other feedback you may didn't even have self insight around. There, you get to really spend a little bit of time reflecting more about, okay, I want to be as successful as I can be. I need to make some adjustments. I need
Hmm.
to personally improve. That enables you to decide, what am I going to do in terms of taking action next time? Because
Yeah.
if you just hear feedback and you never do anything with it, you really are not becoming a better leader. You're not becoming a better professional. Um, Lastly, I would just say this: like, if there are a couple things that you do want to really improve on, write them down, put them on a plan, because we
Mhm.
know from the research, to the extent that you write something down and you actually bring it forward multiple times, you're going to actually make progress versus something you just put in your head and you forget about in, a week.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. We're actually in the process of bringing a new product to market as a company. This that kind of to helps to address some of this in a way, and it's an AI driven, hyper personalized growth platform. So it's designed to create growth plans to the employee, like for each employee in the organization or on a team or a subset of a group, whatever. But it'll help them once those areas are identified. It helps them have a place to go to find out, well, where do I watch, what videos can I watch, or what
Hmm.
YouTube, what podcasts can I listen to, or what courses should I be taking to do something about the feedback that I've been getting once they
That's
want to
great.
make that into a plan, right? So it's a
Yeah.
very cool platform that we're launching right now called Jericho. But
I would.
there's a oh,
mm,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Mark, I would just say that is a really great idea from the standpoint. I find that so many leaders have self awareness and want to take action, and they're not sure what to do next. Like,
Exactly.
what's the right video for me to watch, or what's the right white
Mhm.
paper that would be interesting about this concept? And yeah, that's a really really cool idea.
Well, I looked at it as so the big challenge that most organizations have from a training and development perspective after 15 years of selling training and development into hundreds and hundreds of companies, what I find is that if there's a desire to grow, it's specifically, well, who needs what, and we don't. Uh, it's very challenging to tell. And so if HR is then purchasing this stuff, we end up you might put a whole group of people, maybe you have 24 people that might need it. So we put all 24 through, but really only 8 of them needed that training,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
we spend a lot of and if you're paying on a per person basis, and that course was $1,250 per person, right? Well, you just dropped over $30,000. You didn't have to, and
Yeah.
you could have got away with 10 or less, right? And so it's a diagnostic tool as much as it is, for organizations, as much as it is for each individual learner to know what's out there. And honestly, like, so much of this stuff is freely available on YouTube in podcasts like this one, where you just need to immerse yourself in there, and then you can take, like you said, we get it to a stage of awareness, right? And then we decide, okay, I want to go to work on that. And now we can move it towards improvement. You don't always need to go to a course. In fact, most people don't have time to anymore, right? And so
Absolutely.
this is like it's helping to harness all of that for them. And so our goal with it is to be able to build each person at least a minimum $10,000 training program without spending any additional money beyond the
Hmm.
Jericho membership, right?
That's great.
And then of course there's paid training options that we offer them as well. So like coming to the Thriving Leader program, which everybody needs to be signing up for and getting ready to come to Nashville in February with us. But more to come on that later in a commercial that I'm sure the team will insert halfway through this episode. So but let me look. I want to go back and just talk a little bit more about this. There's something here that I think a lot of people struggle with. Maybe ego gets in the way. And I recently was challenged with this because my Christine and I are co-founders and husband and wife that run this company, and we have coaches, okay, from outside the company that work with us. And we were recently getting some feedback from the coach. And I didn't feel, in this particular case, I didn't feel the feedback was wise. And I didn't feel it was for us. This is a unique case. But sometimes we get feedback and we're not sure, like, maybe I don't see that as relevant to me, or maybe I'm in denial a little bit. I mean, do you have any tips for someone to be able to discern when they're getting constructive criticism, or getting some feedback? Like, how do you know if that's really like that feedback is really for you? Because I think sometimes we feel bad. I got some feedback. I got slapped on the hand. I feel bad about it for a day, right? I say that I'm going to change, but then we don't,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then maybe, yeah, go ahead.
Here's what I tell leaders. There are two things I always tell leaders. One is, first, if you're getting that feedback, don't react to it as you're hearing it. Take a
Hmm.
step back, let it kind of wash over you for a week or so, and maybe take a harder look at it. It's like, okay, again, feedback is all somebody else's perspective of you. So it's not necessarily saying you are that, whatever it is.
Yep.
The other thing I always say is, talk to your significant other.
Hmm.
Share that feedback and just see, hey, am I not seeing something here? Because typically with people that we like and appreciate and trust, we
Right.
sometimes will be more open to their thoughts and perspectives. The other
Hmm.
thing is, I just encourage every leader that's out there is to have your own uh, pers- uh, personal board of directors. Like,
Hmm.
who are the people that you trust? A mentor, a boss, some peers that maybe are people you worked with in the past. People that if you were to ask them to be super vulnerable and tell me the hard thing, who are those people for you? And when I have ever gotten feedback that was really hard for me to take, I always went to them and I always asked them, like, I got this feedback. What am I missing here? What does not feel right, in terms of
Hmm.
what I need to be more open to? And they would always tell me. And sometimes it came back, it's like, yeah, I don't see that. That just doesn't feel right. And others would say, yeah, you're here. Let me give you two examples of
Spot on.
this in your real life. And it's probably pretty true. Somebody might have that perspective on you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, one of the things that I've learned, and this is more in recent years, and I did not understand this years ago. It's more maybe the last like 24 months that this really has evolved for me. And it's understanding the difference between feeling bad about not performing, right? And being convicted to perform better,
Hmm.
right? So like when you all of none of us wants to let a client down or let a coworker down or a family member. Like we, for the most part, I would imagine all of us are solving for ways to not do that, right? It's why we try to show up on time for things, or we try to complete tasks by when we said we were going to, and like there's a trust that gets built. But then like when we don't do that enough times in a row, right, that trust gets eroded,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so the question then is like, do you feel bad about that, or are you convicted to do better?
Hmm.
And this, by the way, you recommended talking to your spouse about this. That's where this came from. This comes from Christine. That's her thing. Like, are you ashamed of the way you performed, or are you convicted to do better? And if you're changing your process or changing your ways because you feel bad, it almost never sticks,
Yeah.
right?
It's
But
a
when you're
it's a lot
convicted, it
like
does.
using your strengths, right? If you're
Mhm.
trying to be somebody you're not, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of research out there about being authentic, and that's also about self awareness. So if the
Mhm.
way you get things done looks like A, and then you try and be something that looks like B,
Yep.
you're one, it's not going to be something that you're going to stick to, but also people are going to see it and they're going to be like, well, yeah, Andy shows up right on time, and all of a sudden he comes 10 minutes early. It's like, okay, well, is he being authentic? What did he get some feedback and now, he'll just go back to the way he was doing it before? That doesn't
Yeah.
really, over the long term, that's not who you are, and that will not enable you to be successful. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't improve on something if you want to be better at something. I want to be better at sales. Well, I'm never going to be the best salesperson, but there are things I can do that are going to, if it becomes habit, will make me better at an aspect of being successful in my role. But I'm not going to move to being a salesperson as my number one thing I do, because that's just
Right.
not who I am.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. Let's just say, we're in a, a geography where good talent is hard to come by. And the challenge is we're trying to get a certain set of behaviors. We want people to operate at a certain standard, right? Or better. But we feel like, maybe I feel like as a leader, that if I'm giving that person or giving those people too much constructive criticism, too much feedback, and correcting behavior, that I'm afraid they'll leave.
Uh-huh.
And I can't have that because I need those people. And sometimes a warm body is better than not having anybody, right?
Hmm.
Any advice for people in that role? Because we're getting into performance management territory a little bit here, right? And we're getting
Yeah.
into, but also it's like, man, and this is right in the heart of where so many, like, we have 60 plus sales managers in our sales manager program right now, and they're struggling with this because, like, man, if I call that guy out or ask him to go do more, right, I'm afraid he'll leave,
Yeah.
and that's a
Uh,
challenge.
so I people may not like my response on this, but it's a
Hmm.
perspective that I have. I teach at the University of Nebraska Omaha, coaching, and I um, there's some words, Mark, if I can just call out
Hmm.
some words that were used there that I think
Hmm.
you have to change your mind to. It's not calling people out. It's
Hmm.
enhancing their performance. It
Yeah.
isn't giving them negative feedback. It is helping them be more successful. And so
Hmm.
one of the things that we know from effective coaching is before you start down the process of giving somebody constructive feedback
Yep.
or giving them any kind of coaching, you better have built trust with them first. And so when I
Hmm.
hear people saying that they are afraid to give people feedback because they're leaving, that suggests to me that they haven't built trust yet. Because I don't
Hmm.
know about you, but for me, if a manager that I trust gave me feedback, I would thank them. I would be one to say, "Wow, you're right. I can do better with that." But I have had bosses that I didn't trust, and when they gave me feedback, it was quick on the defensive. It
Hmm.
was, why are what's going on here? Is this person trying to push me out? Not that that was be ever the situation, but that's the reaction that people have to a situation where they're getting feedback from somebody they don't trust. They become defensive, they push back, they don't really want that information from that individual. So if I'm working with a manager, I would say before you start spending a lot of time, no, now, if somebody is like not showing up their third day, and that's the reality, that's a different situation. What I think
Yep.
you're talking about is somebody that, hey, they've been here for a little bit of time, and we want them to be here, but we're afraid to give them feedback. That can't work. That is
Yep.
an unworkable situation. So I tell them, spend time getting to know them as an individual, understand what they care about, what are they motivated by, and then learn good coaching practices, where you ask questions and you're curious and you want to understand how to help that person be more successful. The trust and the technique, I've never had anybody that did those two things, somebody come back to him and said, you gave me feedback and now I'm going to leave. Just doesn't work that way.
Hmm. Yeah. I want to bring it back to the piece you said about trust. So have you established any level of trust, with this person? By the way, the answer could be no. And we don't even have time to go off into that universe of what to do
Right.
now on this one. So maybe we'll have to do this again. But it is a good question to come back to and ask yourself, like, as I'm trying to help this person become a better salesperson or become a better location manager, or grow, like, have we established trust, or am I just expecting them to show up and uphold a standard that I think that they know but they don't
Hmm.
really care about, right?
Yeah. Right.
So Yeah. And
Exactly.
in some cases,
Set
by the way,
expectations.
in some cases, we might be talking to that person who literally has somebody who's just not shown up for 3 days in a row. I know we have
That's the
some of those
difference.
people listening to the show as well who lead people like that, and it's frustrating. So,
Definitely.
man, okay, Andy, this has been like a very, very fast 35 minutes, at least for me. And so, anybody who's
Hmm.
still listening in, it probably has been as well. There's a ton of gold in here. Any, I guess, last thoughts that you would want to share before we land for this episode?
Yeah, again, I don't know all of the audience, but I would just say that if you're a leader in agribusiness, you have the most important role in your organizations. You have an impact on frontline staff in terms of engagement and turnover. You're building the strategy and where things are going for your organization. You have a big job, and being the best leader you can be is just incredibly important for your organization's success.
Good. I love it, man. Where do we go to get connected with you or find out more about Decatur Street Solutions? I know you're on LinkedIn. You guys go look up Andy and connect with them there.
Yeah.
Where else do we find out more?
Yeah, feel free to go to my website. It's www.decaturstreetconsulting.com. I put a lot of material out on LinkedIn, and I also publish a newsletter called The Leader Mindset. And so you can find me in any of those places.
So good, man. Awesome. Well, Andy, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mark. It was great. Really enjoyed it.
You bet.